As the U.S. sees record-breaking COVID numbers, Europe is battling a second wave of its own. An Amnesty International report says things are so bad in Belgium, nursing homes abandoned thousands of elderly people who died and did not seek hospital treatment for many who were infected. ABC News foreign correspondent James Longman joins me now from London. James, I know you spent a lot of time in Belgium. What's your reaction to this report, given what you saw there?
Yeah, hi, Diane. Well, Belgium, the first time round, which is when this report is dealing with, actually didn't suffer too badly in its health system from coronavirus. We saw those horrible pictures coming out of Italy and France, here in the UK, very, very high death numbers. But Belgium's health system seems to survive the onslaught. What Amnesty International is saying is actually that the care system was where the focus really should have been. And actually, this is something we've seen across Europe, a real focus from central government to make sure that hospitals are protected, that the health system is protected, but there may have been a major oversight in the care system and in the elderly. So the Amnesty report says between March and October of this year, 61.3% of all COVID deaths in Belgium took place in nursing homes. That is astounding. It says that they weren't quick enough to implement measures to protect the residents there, and as a result, they failed to protect their human rights. We saw this in Britain. We saw this actually again in Sweden, which there was a lot of talk about how well Sweden had managed to remain kind of partially open, but at the same time keep COVID numbers relatively low. And again, it's this issue around the care system versus the health system. Big problems in the care homes in Britain, for example, getting them PPE in time and making sure that when an elderly person was sick in the hospital, they weren't transferred back to the nursing home too quickly. That may have been what was happening in Belgium, certainly what happened here in the UK. This is probably going to be the first of a number of reports that look at care systems across Europe.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure we'll be seeing some for here in the US as well in the coming months. But James, overall, how is Europe dealing with this second wave? Are they doing things differently than they did the first time around?
Well, yes, is the short answer, and things are looking a little bit better. I think after a lot of people had gone away on their summer vacations, they came back to their home countries, they came back to their towns and cities, and we saw infection rates skyrocket really across the whole of Europe. So these countries across Europe have basically gone back down into a form of lockdown. There are two separate strategies which I think are working. The first is mass testing. We've seen that happen in a number of different countries. Slovakia managed to test, it says, the whole country. Austria is planning to do the same. That's 9 million people before the end of the year. Here in Britain, they've trialled mass testing in Liverpool, a city in the north. They've seen their infection rate go down from around 500 per 100,000 of the population to under 300. So that is working. That's a sign of hope. But the major strategy that seems to be working, of course, is lockdowns. Britain is currently in a lockdown. It started November 4th. It will finish December 2nd. But there's a big difference between what Europe is doing in terms of lockdown and the United States. The biggest one seems to be around schools. Whilst in the US, a number of places, and you mentioned Michigan there, going to online learning, Britain, France, Germany, and other countries are making sure that schools stay open. That has two effects. It makes sure that children can continue their educations, but it frees up their parents to continue motoring the economy. And yes, their parents might not be able to go physically into work, but they can continue working from home. And this is a strategy that does seem to be working across Europe. Restaurants, bars, clubs, gyms, all those things are closed in Europe. They remain open across a lot of the United States. And I think that's where we're seeing divergent paths, and possibly the reason why we're seeing divergent results.
And a lot of debate here in the U.S. over those topics, James, as you can imagine. Also, in Britain specifically, we know that Prime Minister Boris Johnson is now quarantining after coming in contact with someone who tested positive. Now, Johnson already had COVID. He ended up in the ICU for several days with it. So how much concern is there that he could get it again?
Well, that's the great unknown, isn't it, Diane? I mean, he's called himself as fit as a butcher's dog. I'm not sure if that's an expression that you share over there, but this is something that the Prime Minister does a lot. He uses phrases that no one else does. But yes, he has said he's fine. He says he's self-isolating at home. Of course, home for him is the flat above the office in 10 Downing Street. This is all because he came into contact with someone on Thursday who's then since tested positive for coronavirus. He and the government had a very, very tough week last week. He fired, or a certain number of senior aides certainly had to leave 10 Downing Street. They seem to want to out-chaos the White House at Downing Street. And he was hoping to have a reset of sorts this week to relaunch government strategy. A lot of hope around the vaccine, for instance, but that seems to have gone gone slightly down the pan. There is a lot of talk around why this happened, given that Britain, as I've just told you, is in lockdown. Should he have been meeting an MP face-to-face? Can't he do these meetings on Zoom? So, I mean, the headline is that the Prime Minister is fine. He has at the moment, no symptoms whatsoever from COVID. He says his body is bursting with antibodies, but because we don't know whether or not you can actually get reinfected with coronavirus, he is staying home. Business of government, we're told, continues, but we're all keeping our fingers crossed that this doesn't derail Britain's effort to roll out the vaccine if and when it comes. And I'm sure in the United States, people are hoping for the same.
Absolutely. Infection rare, reinfection rare, but possible, hoping the Prime Minister is safe at home. James Longman, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.